Today we continue the story of God's people and this mission that God is on to restore humanity back into a relationship with God and to restore humanity into a healthier relationship with one another. The people have just come out of slavery in Egypt, and God leads them to Mt Sinai. And on this mountain, God gives the people the law. Now, looking back as people living under the rule and reign of Jesus, we see the law as something that is restrictive, as something that has certain things that are not helpful for our walk in faith. But the law and Mount Sinai served a very specific, good, and healthy purpose for the people. And there are lessons that we can learn from this event that apply to us as well as we think about the different boundaries that God has given us in our day-to-day life. So let's tune in and listen to today's message about Mount Sinai and the people becoming the covenant people of God. So is there anyone here that likes being told what to do? There could be somebody like that. I don't hear of that often, but there are some people that really like structure and directions. They want to know what other people want from them. But a lot of us don't like being told what to do. And maybe that's because we just are feeling independent, or maybe it's that pioneering spirit out here in the Midwest, or maybe we just have that general rebellion against authority. Whatever it might be, we generally don't like other people telling us what to do. At our house, we've been trying to teach Ben that when he throws food on the floor, he has to pick it up. And so when we get him there and we say, okay, Ben, pick up this food, he wants to turn around and run the other way, right? He doesn't want to be told what to do. Then at times, sometimes if we just set him there, sometimes he'll just go and start picking it up himself because, we're not telling him to do it. But we do know that there are some things that we simply cannot do. Whether somebody tells us we should not do them or not, there's just things that are going to go very badly if we do them. So don't try to take a large container of liquid onto an airplane. It's just not going to go well for you. They will confiscate it. They will throw it away. You can't do it. Don't speed in an ice storm. Don't do it. It's not going to go well. You will probably end up in the ditch. So there are some things, no matter how independent-spirited you might be, there are just some things that we cannot or we should not do. And that's how some people view Christianity, is this set of rules, these things that we should not do. And yes, there are some different guidelines or rules that we follow. And in the past, there were some rules that today sound pretty restrictive. So I was reading an old book in our library back there from when a bunch of pastors got together in the early 1900s. This was before they had formalized some of the denominations that this church was part of, and they were trying to figure out what can we agree on as we come together as these churches. And they decided a couple of different things. One of them was going to be young people could not go to movies. Okay. Also, you could not have radios in your house. And there were some other rules like that they came up with in the early 1900s, these rules. And some of you might have grown up with very similar rules about not dancing, or don't smoke, or don't drink, right? These are some of the different rules that Christians have been accused of having. And that's how sometimes we get the reputation of not being very fun to be around. We don't have any freedoms. We have all these rules that we need to obey, all these restrictions on us. And for many people, the thought of becoming a Christian sounds like this limiting experience in their life, not a life-giving experience. Now, the Bible certainly does have some expectations for how we should live, and dancing is not one of the things that the Bible prohibits. Okay, just to put that out there. But we are reading today about the first time that God lays down boundaries and expectations for this group of people that God has called and that have decided to follow God. And so this is the first time in the Bible that we're going to look at today here where God gives this set of instructions. And what we're going to see here is that before God even utters any instructions for them about what they should or should not do, it begins by God saying, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt. There is this act of grace that takes place before the instructions come. Grace comes before the law. Freedom and deliverance, rescue comes before the call for obedience. And that does make a difference in how we understand the purpose of what we're going to talk about today, the Ten Commandments and the law that God gives. So I'm going to set the context for us a little bit as we get into this passage. I'll get to it in just a moment. So the context that we are talking about here, I'm going to read in a moment from a few places in Exodus 19 and then a little bit in Exodus 20. So last week we talked about God leading the slaves out of Egypt with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. They were a mixed group of people, it says in Exodus 12. And then they get to Mt Sinai. It's been 44 days since they have left Egypt. And a few days later, on day 50, God is going to descend on this mountain with thunder and smoke and trumpets, not to enslave the people again, but to make a covenant with the people. And as part of the covenant, the people will receive what we call the Ten Commandments and the law. So let me read here a little bit from Exodus 19. Okay? In Exodus 19, I'm going to start in verse 4. I'm going to read 4 through 7, then I'm going to jump to verse 16. You can follow along a little bit if you'd like, or you can listen here as I read from Exodus chapter 19. God is talking to them from the mountain, and it begins, You yourselves have seen what I did to Egypt, and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then out of all the nations you will be a treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine, you will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words you are to speak to the Israelites. So this is God giving these words to Moses to pass on to the people. And then jumping to verse 16. On the morning of the third day, there was thunder and lightning, with a thick cloud over the mountain and a very loud trumpet blast. Everyone in the camp trembled. Then Moses led the people out of the camp to meet with God. And they stood at the foot of the mountain. Mount Sinai was covered with smoke because the Lord descended on it in fire. The smoke billowed up from it like smoke from a furnace, and the whole mountain trembled violently. At the sound of the trumpet, as the sound of the trumpet grew louder and louder, Moses spoke, and the voice of God answered him. And Moses spoke all these words. Jumping to chapter 20. This is God speaking from the mountain these words directly to the people. These are the Ten Commandments. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above or on earth beneath or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sins of the parent to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not hold anyone guiltless who misuses my name. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath day to the Lord your God. And on it you shall not do any work, neither you nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them, but he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blesses the Sabbath day and made it holy. Honor your father and mother, so that you may live long in the land your Lord your God will give you. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife or his male or female servant, his ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. When the people saw the thunder and lightning and heard the trumpet and saw the smoke in the mountain, they trembled with fear. They stayed at a distance and said to Moses, "Speak to us yourself and we will listen, but do not have God speak to us or we will die." So that is the story of the giving of the Ten Commandments. And we see here the people having some first encounters with this God who led them out of slavery, who rescued them from bondage. This was the God who was stronger than the Egyptian gods, stronger than Pharaoh and Pharaoh's mighty army. Now think about it this way. What is your reaction when somebody does something nice for you? When somebody does something nice for you. Oftentimes we are taught, we say thank you, right? That's just the general. Somebody holds a door open, somebody does something small that's nice for us, we say thank you. But sometimes it might be something bigger that somebody might do that's really nice for you.
When I was in college, I ran a marathon, and I had some friends that, out of their own volition, said that they wanted to come along and watch and cheer. It was going to be a couple hours away, and they drove down from like the Wichita area of Kansas down to Oklahoma to watch me run this marathon. They didn't have to do that, but that was very nice of them. And it can be a human experience when somebody does something nice for us that we want to repay them in some way, if it is a greater gesture. So somebody might make you brownies, and so you decide maybe you want to make some cookies or a cake to give back to them. I don't know how common of a thing, but I've heard if somebody gives you something like in a casserole dish, you make a casserole when you give the dish back to them. I've heard of some people doing it. Kind of that reciprocal. Somebody does something nice for you, you do something nice for them. At our seed swap that we had this last spring, in our tractor and truck day, we had people that were just so thankful that we were putting on these events that they wanted to give us money. We were doing something nice for them, and they wanted to repay us in some way. So one of our reactions when something nice happens for us is we want to do something nice in return, to repay people in some way. Here's another example of how somebody doing something nice can have an effect on us. When I was a runner back in high school, I was recruited by a couple of different colleges. And these coaches would come, and they would say, you have potential. You could fit on our team. I have a place for you here. Right? Those are encouraging. Those are very nice, affirmative things. And that gives you feelings of being chosen, feeling that maybe I'm worthy of their attention, or I can cultivate my abilities with them. I have a greater potential that they could help me grow into. And the thing of that is, when they were calling me to join their team, they were also calling me to a more rigorous program than what I was already experiencing, right? I would go up to that next level of training. There would be more restrictions on my time. There'd be more restrictions on my diet, on some of the activities that I would do. I couldn't go mountain biking and risk breaking my neck. They did not approve of that. But at the end, there was this result. I was improving. I was getting better. I was having a place and purpose for my talents to be released or to be shown, experienced. It's not all that different from what these slaves are experiencing as they leave Egypt. They have been chosen out of all the peoples of the world to be freed, to live under this God, to live under the Creator God who has the power to end Pharaoh and Pharaoh's army, to release these slaves. We could almost think of it more than a coach, recruiting me out of rural Illinois. We could think about it a coach recruiting a player from maybe even an inner city neighborhood or some place where there is just no opportunity, where there's no hope, there's no future for them. And this coach coming in and saying, I have a plan for you. I can take you someplace where you can have a purpose, where your abilities can flourish. Okay, that's the context that is happening here for these slaves as they leave Egypt and encounter this God. So that's the context. Let's explore what happens here. God leads them to this mountain, and God forms a covenant with them. A covenant. They have left one king, and now they accept Yahweh as king. Israel was used to this Pharaoh that enslaved them, and now they will have this king that leads them to freedom. The people of God are going to be ruled by what is called a theocracy, where God is king. They're being led by Moses out of Egypt, but Moses is not taking over as king. Instead, Moses acts as this in-between figure between God and the people. He's a prophet, is the language that's used. Moses is not going to make the rules and the laws for the people. God will make the rules and the laws for the people. God will lead the people directly. There won't be any king, there won't be any politicians, there won't be any central government for this group of people. For over the 600,000 men plus women, so we could consider over 1 million people are going to live without a central government for over 200 years in the land of Israel. And then we'll learn about in just a couple of weeks that they get jealous of these other nations that do have a king. We read about that in 1 Samuel, and they come to Samuel and they ask to have a king as well, like the other nations. But beginning their journey, God is enthroned as king over the people. And they rule without any other king for generations. So this covenant that they make here on Mount Sinai is the process to make it official for the king to form this relationship with the people. It's kind of like a treaty between the king and the king's people. So in England, way back in the year 1200, they formed the Magna Carta. So that's where the king of England was being really oppressive, and the people rose up and there were some rebellions. And they said, okay, king, we're going to make some documents here that form some boundaries with our relationship, and that's the Magna Carta. It could also be compared to our Constitution a little bit. In our Constitution, it says that this is what the government is going to do, and this is what the people is going to do, right? It outlines the relationship. It's the same kind of idea. In the U.S. Constitution, we said, we have been freed from the King of England, and now here is our new government. The covenant on Mount Sinai says, God says, I have rescued you from slavery, and here is how you will now live as my people. Similar sort of idea going on here. And I'm not going to outline it here, but it has actually been compared to the actual covenants that other countries in that region would make, kings would make between themselves and their people. There's a 6-step process to that. I'm not going to go through that. If you're curious about it, ask me about it later. But this is outlined in what happens here in Exodus. This is a formal legal covenant that would be recognized by the different people in the area. And as part of that, the Jewish people do not call these the 10 Commandments. They call them the 10 Words. And in Christian circles, we often leave out this first part, which is very important. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. That is the first part of the 10 Commandments, and then following are the things they're supposed to do. So the king says, God says, you were hurting, you were in need, you cried out for help, and I rescued you, and I brought you out of bondage. And if you would like to be loyal to me as ones who are saved, here is what you must do. It's not all that different from that inner city kid, they're playing basketball or whatever it might be. Your future is limited here, and I have invited you into a future. I'm going to give you some directions to make this happen and make it go well for you. So we have the 10 Commandments. These are expectations that the people are agreeing to in response for God's deliverance. Now, after the 10 Commandments, God gives a total of 613 other laws. And in Jewish teaching, a lot of them say that all of that 613 can all be filtered back to the 10 Commandments. And then it's interesting, as you read through the different prophets, they start to narrow down, okay, how narrow can we get these? And so you get like the prophet Micah, who takes the 10 Commandments and squishes it down to 3, right? Do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. And then we get to the New Testament and Jesus, and it's love the Lord your God with all your heart. And then Jesus says, love your neighbor as yourself. And that fulfills the law and the prophets. But for starting out here, we have these 10 Commandments as an agreement that the people are going to form this relationship with God. And they do agree with it. In Exodus 24, at the end of the giving of the law, the people make this statement. Moses says, then he took the book of the covenant. Moses took the book of the covenant, read it to the people, and they responded, we will do everything the Lord has said. We will obey. And then Moses took the blood, he sprinkled it on the people and said, this is the blood of the covenant the Lord has made with you in accordance with all those words. Does that sound a little bit like communion? This is the blood of my covenant that I have made. Do this in remembrance of me. Now today is International Communion Sunday, and we're not doing communion today. I'm sorry about that. But we have the words that Jesus speaks at the Last Supper spoken by Moses over the people. The blood of the covenant the Lord has given with you. In the movie Remember the Titans, Coach Boone comes in as a new coach. And I'm going to skip over a whole lot of details in the movie of Remember the Titans. It's a good movie. Go watch it. But Coach Boone comes in. He's a new coach. And the first time he meets with the team, he tells the players that if they want to be on his team, they need to listen to him. He makes this statement. He says, this is not a democracy. This is a dictatorship. I am the law. Okay, that is Coach Boone laying things down. And he works them hard. He puts them through their paces. But over the season, he takes this group of conflicted youth and he transforms them not only into a winning team, but into a supportive family who support one another. And this is similar to what God is doing here on Mount Sinai. On Sinai, God creates this covenant with the people and begins to form them for a purpose. Now, in our Christian circles, we're often used to thinking about the law as something that marks what is sinful and what is not sinful, right? That's how Paul talks about the law. We're used to thinking about the law is you do this or you don't do this, and that's what is sin or not sin. But the law and the way the law functions is a lot broader than that. The law is given and it's followed by the Israelites as an act of gratitude for salvation from slavery and as a condition of the covenant that they have with God. It's used as a tool to shape them into a certain kind of people, We'll talk about that a little bit next week as we look at them wandering through the wilderness. Next week, we're going to talk about how they've been in Egypt. God has gotten them out of Egypt, but now they need to get Egypt out of the people. That's next week's sermon. But what kind of people are they being shaped into? What is God going to do for them now that they are free? Well, we saw that here in Exodus 19. You yourselves have seen what I did to Egypt and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. That's the grace. God has given them grace in freeing them. Now here's the stipulation of the covenant. Now if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then out of all the nations you will be my treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine, you will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. A kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Holy means something that is set apart. It is kept apart for a purpose. Kingdom of priests. What do priests do? Priests are the people that mediate between God and humans. And so God says that this mixed group of slaves that have come out of Egypt, they're still following this family of Abraham, they will be a people, they will be a nation that mediates between God and the rest of humanity. They are chosen for the purpose of connecting humanity back to God, restoring that connection that was lost during the fall. They're not going to exist as this little community of people who follow God just for their own benefit, closed off, but God chooses them for the purpose of drawing humanity back to God. As we go through the story of the Bible, we'll see that they didn't always live up to this calling. At different points, they did become closed off and restrictive. But their seed, their origin, is to continue to fulfill this promise given to Abraham. They are blessed so they can be a blessing. Now, in our Christian lives, we sometimes stop at this similar idea. We have been saved. God has saved me from my sins. I said my prayer, I've got my ticket to heaven. But really, God does so much more than save us from something. God also saves us for something. God saves us for a purpose. We are saved so we can have a relationship, a connection with God. We can have a restored connection with each other. We can have inner healing and be restored inside of ourselves. But also so that we can show others a path to having a restored life. Jesus says in John 10:10, that's probably one of my favorite verses of the Bible, John 10:10, I have come that you may have life to the fullest. Or I have come that you may have abundant life. That is the purpose of Jesus coming. And when Jesus gives the Great Commission at the end of the book of Matthew, Jesus says, go therefore into all the world to make disciples, right? It's not something new that God is doing. The Great Commission is Jesus going back to this covenant made at Mt Sinai, back to the promise of Abraham. We are saved for a purpose, to help the world become reconnected to the true God, to be the light that shines the way to freedom and life. Jesus is being intentional with his invitation there at the end of the book of Matthew. And we see the Exodus, before I get to 1 Peter there, Jesus being intentional with his, let me draw one more connection for you here, this between Exodus and Jesus. Okay, Exodus, we talked about, it happens alongside Passover, right? The people leave, that's how they celebrate Passover. What do we celebrate that happens alongside Passover? Easter. Easter happens during the week of Passover, right? I talked about it's 50 days from the people leaving Egypt until God descends on Mount Sinai and gives the law and the covenant. What is 50 days after Easter? Pentecost. Penta is 50. It is celebrated in the Jewish calendar as Shavuot, where God comes down and gives the covenant with humanity. What happens at Pentecost? The Spirit comes down and writes a new covenant on the hearts of believers, rather than on stones. So in 1 Peter 2, Peter is writing to Christians. He is writing to Gentiles, non-Jews in modern-day Turkey. And this is what Peter writes. He says, see if this sounds familiar, you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. Once you were not a people, but now you are the people of God. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. I encourage you all to go and read Hebrews chapter 8. In there, the writer of Hebrews quotes Jeremiah 31. And in Jeremiah 31, The prophet says, I will put my laws in their minds and write them on their hearts. I will be their God, and they will be my people. You see, God still forms a covenant with people today, but now it is through Jesus. We are invited into being a royal priesthood, a holy nation. The stipulations of this covenant are not the heavy laws given to the Israelites, but through the Holy Spirit, the law of God is written on our hearts and minds as we grow to become more Christ-like in our lives. Let me return to the question that I started with here. Do you like being told what to do? I probably haven't persuaded you anymore that you like being told what to do. But what if the one giving you directions is the one who sees your potential, the one who maybe saved you, the one who has a plan for you to have a full and abundant life? Now, rules can feel restrictive at times. There are definitely times I read through the Bible and I say, you know, God, that's really hard for me to do. That feels like you're taking something away from me. I drive down the road, though, and I see a speed limit sign, and that also feels restrictive at times. Going in front of the church here, it's a 40-mile-an-hour speed zone, and it just feels like I want to go 50. But I know there's probably going to be a cop sitting here at church because they really like to sit and camp out at our church. Jaywalking. You know, I go downtown, and, you know, the law says I have to cross at the crosswalk, but there's no cars coming. Why can't I just cross in the middle? There's sometimes you run into not so much here, but like if you're in Kansas, there's stoplights sometimes in the middle of nowhere. And you're sitting there at this red light, and you're like, do I need to stop? Is anyone going to see if I run the red light here? So there are times when the rules around us in normal life can feel restrictive as well. But they do also create boundaries. They create a safe place where there is no chaos, where we are not going to be harmed. The Ten Commandments and the law were never given to the people as a way of controlling them. They were an invitation to live as a rescued and chosen people. People who reflect the character of God to the world. And when we get to Jesus, we see that Jesus refines and perfects this mandate and process for us. So this week, as you go forward, I encourage you to respond with grace and obedience, knowing that God desires to shape you into being a chosen people, that we are chosen to be a royal priesthood, a holy nation. Let the commands and purposes of God be written into your hearts and sink into your spirit. Let's pray. Lord God, I'm thankful that you have given us boundaries in life. I'm thankful that you have not left it up to us to choose completely what is right or wrong. Because, God, sometimes I want to take the easy path. God, sometimes I don't want to do what is uncomfortable. Sometimes I want to do what is selfish. But, God, I'm thankful that you have given us directions in the Bible and through your teachings in the New Testament that can help form me into being a person that reflects you to the world. Lord, help me to see the freedoms that you have given me in your commands. Help me to experience freedoms through your Spirit. Help me to live not burdened by the law, but released to go out and live the good news to others. Help me and help us to live as a people in covenant with you, doing your will, that you may be a light within us and a light shining through us. Go before us and continue to challenge us and shape us, dear Lord. In Jesus' name, amen.
So there we go. God has chosen this people for a mission. And that involves the people being formed into being people to carry out this mission. And that mission is something that Jesus gives to his followers, to the disciples, and it is passed on to us. This mission to help restore humanity's connection to God and to live in community with one another and in covenant relationship with God as well. If you enjoyed this message, go ahead and give it a like, subscribe so you don't miss any more messages. You can also find past episodes on our website and stay up to date with what is going on in our church on our Facebook page as well. You can find all of that at scienceridgechurch.org. And you, of course, are welcome to join us on Sunday mornings. We meet at 10 a.m. on Science Ridge Road, just on the north edge of Sterling. We'd love to see you here. Hope you have a great day.